The story begins with the fishing boat Salida facing a very strong storm. Captain Will and his crew struggle to collect the net as the situation worsens. Then, an almost invisible creature rises from the sea right next to the boat and attacks a fisherman named Joey. Will is the only one who sees the monster, and before he can react, the boat is rocked by another wave. When he looks again, both the monster and Joey have simply vanished. The others try to save their friend, but there is no sign of him. Unbeknownst to anyone, the creature approaches the boat from underneath and clings to the hull. When the Salida returns to the dock, Joey's wife, Barbara, is waiting for him. As she receives the bad news, something secretly detaches from the boat. Shortly after, the two younger fishermen talk about the sad incident. Danny doesn't believe in superstitions, but Drew thinks it might be a bad omen, even joking that albatrosses will soon fall from the sky. Just then, a bird drops its droppings right on Drew's shirt. They start laughing and feel embarrassed when Will arrives, telling them to stop joking as they are heading to a wake. Accompanying him is his daughter Carly, who is secretly dating Danny. During Joey's wake, Will sits next to Danny's father, Ben. He offers his condolences but also shows concern for his son. Will barely responds, as he can't stop thinking about the creature that attacked Joey. Carly and her friend Erin plan an outing with the boys without Will knowing. She stole the keys to a cabin he owns on one of the nearby islands because her father is against her dating. On the boat, Drew warns that Danny and Carly will have to go ahead with Erin, as he has the night shift and will only head to the cabin the next day. As that never happens. Since the thing is either very strong or very heavy, the line eventually snaps. Danny tries to help with the net and ends up catching a dead albatross, much to his friend's horror. Because of the accident, Will couldn't meet his monthly quota to pay off the boat. His creditor is Roy, a very rude man who calls Will a failure and almost starts a fight. When Sheriff Jay arrives to intervene, we find out he is Will's brother. Jay takes him to speak with a biologist who is helping to find out the reason for the sudden scarcity of fish. Her name is Arden, and she says she has found specimens of a very toxic type of algae. Erin goes to say goodbye to Drew, asking him not to take long since she doesn't want to be a third wheel. They kiss, unaware that something in the water is watching them. By the end of the day, Will is discouraged about his finances, while Drew notices something strange in the water and decides to investigate, equipped with a stick and a flashlight. The creature emerges a few meters from him, and Drew can barely see its outline. Intrigued, the young man moves closer until the monster spits a green slime onto his chest. The substance has an immediate effect, and Drew starts feeling unwell. As he falls to the ground, the monster reveals its grotesque forms and jumps almost on top of him, licking his paralyzed face before striking. The next day, Roy is astonished to see that Will intends to go fishing and warns him that there will be a storm. Additionally, he won't let him use the boat for free. Will sacrifices his last savings to pay him and says he will stay away from the storm. Heading to the Salida, he notices Drew's absence, as well as the general mess. Then he spots a pool of slime similar to what he saw on the Salida shortly after the tragic trip. When Arden appears, he takes the opportunity to ask her opinion, but the biologist admits she has never seen anything like that. Following the trail to the edge, they notice something floating in the water, and Arden screams when she sees that it's an arm. At the cabin, Carly hears knocking at the window and is startled when Danny playfully grabs her, but he insists that the noise wasn't him. Carly asks if Drew should have been there by now, and he says he will check if he has arrived. Meanwhile, Drew is being pulled out of the water in pieces. No one can say what kind of animal could have done something like this, and Jay advises his brother not to go fishing so soon. Arden collects some of the slime for testing in the lab, and Will shows her the similar residue on the Salida. A bit frustrated with her boyfriend's delay, Erin listens to music while waiting for him on the beach. She doesn't notice when the boat's rope starts to be pulled until she sees what is happening when the tip is almost in the water. Running to grab the rope, she is then surprised by the horrendous creature. Screaming, she lets go of the rope and tries to back away, but is hit in the back by a spit. Just like Drew, she begins to lose her movements and staggers more slowly until she collapses sitting down. Then, 3 smaller creatures leap from the back of the larger one and surround the victim. Erin can no longer move and does not even react to the monster's grotesque tongue touching her. The pups start to devour her first, and eventually, the larger beast joins in the attack. Will decides to have a serious conversation with Danny's father. Ben has been struggling with alcohol since he lost one of his men during a storm, just like what happened to Joey. At that time, Will ignored the rumors and jokes about a sea monster, but now he is willing to take it all seriously. In a bitter tone, Ben says that everyone else present swears it was just a shark and implies that he is tired of denying the official version. Will keeps insisting on knowing what he really saw and, for the first time, confesses that he also witnessed something inexplicable. Ben becomes very angry and refuses to support the theory. Little does he know that his son is about to have a similar encounter. Danny is gathering firewood when one of the pups appears among the trees. The young man is startled, but he sees that the creature is also cowering, as if it is scared, and does not display aggressive behavior. Wanting to take a picture of the bizarre creature, he cautiously approaches, but the monster suddenly leaps toward him, biting his hand. Frightened, Danny throws a rock at it and manages to scare it away. Meanwhile, Will goes to talk to Arden about the lab results, unaware that danger is very close, hiding in the treetops. Nearby, a couple stands next to a parked car, and the creature seems to be eyeing them. Arden explains that the slime is a type of paralyzing toxin compatible with marine predators. She mentions that these animals are also masters of disguise and can camouflage their bodies. In the middle of their conversation, the creature jumps from a branch and attacks the couple nearby. When Will and Arden hear the screams, the windshield is already stained red. Will practically pushes the biologist into the car and pulls out a gun before approaching the other vehicle. Cautiously circling the vehicle, he catches the monster feeding on the woman. Her presence frightens him, and he escapes with incredible agility, constantly dodging the shots. Will chases after it, keeping an eye on the movement of the branches. The chase leads to the beach, where two people are peacefully fishing. Will arrives shooting and almost hits one of them when his target jumps into the water. Carly is horrified by the state of Danny's hand when she sees him washing the wound. She is even more shocked when he shows that he managed to take a photo of the creature, but it is evident that the two young people still do not understand the seriousness of the situation. They set the subject aside to enjoy their secret romance while Will frantically calls his daughter, very worried. Jay is already at the scene of the last incident and is starting to lose patience with his brother. He doesn't believe Will's account and even asks if it could have been a psychopath in a costume. Meanwhile, Carly notices that her boyfriend is sweating profusely and his hand is getting worse. He doesn't want to go to the hospital because it will ruin the trip, but she says that dying would be much worse. Reluctantly, he agrees to at least use the first aid kit on the boat. The local restaurant is crowded when Jay informs about the attacks, stressing that there won't be outside help anytime soon due to the storm. He also mentions that some reports include a kind of monster, without mentioning his brother. However, Roy begins to question this part, and Will himself confesses to having seen the creature more than once, revealing the truth about Joey. The commotion starts immediately, and Roy laughs in his face, asking if he has been drinking from the same bottle as Ben. Hearing this, Ben changes his mind and supports Will's account, saying that his friend Duke was also attacked by a monstrous being. The last thing Duke said was that he saw a monster near the bow, and after that, he vanished. At that moment, Barbara rushes in and tells that her sister just called, saying she saw a monster climbing a tree in the park. This leaves some in doubt, but Roy continues to reject the theory. Carly and Danny discover that the boat is gone. Since Aaron also vanished, Danny thinks she stole it to go confront Drew. Will introduces Ben to Arden and is shocked to hear that she is going out to dive, even with a sea monster on the loose. She states that she needs to investigate the creature, and according to her data, its natural habitat should be a deep area. Seeing that he cannot stop her, Will decides to help and says that the deepest point around is a place known as Goliath's Fall. As the three head there, Carly searches for her friend in the brush surrounding the cabin. Fortunately, she doesn't pass where the monster pups are finishing devouring Aaron. Jay ends up teaming up with Roy and his friends to go hunting, still believing it is a wild animal. On the boat, Arden says she doesn't entirely disagree with them. What they think is a monster could just be an uncategorized species. Even so, Ben insists that it's madness to dive right where that thing must live, but Arden ignores him and goes ahead. In the park, Jay finds the remains of an animal and is shocked by the destruction, fearing that his brother might be right. One of the creatures is hiding in the branches, watching the group. When one of them finally spots a strange outline, his face is hit by a jet of poisonous slime, and the monster jumps at him immediately. Jay and Roy almost shoot each other and realize they're walking in circles when someone screams. The unfortunate person who found the other's guts is so shaken that he vomits lunch. Then, seeing the beast perched on a branch, Roy begins to shoot. Jay initially follows suit but then tells him to stop and argues with Roy, claiming that there's nothing there. By this point, Danny's hand is becoming worrisome. To make matters worse, both their cell phones have no signal, and the cabin has no phone. In the park, it isn't long before another one of their hunters gets snagged by a long tongue. He screams for help as he is dragged by his foot. Jay runs after him and finds him being eaten by the creature, which is now fully visible. But when he begins to shoot, the creature's body becomes transparent again, and it jumps to a higher branch without being hit. Jay warns that it's heading towards Roy, and he manages to hit the monster squarely. The beast falls and becomes visible again while down, but suddenly recovers and wraps its tongue around Roy's neck, squeezing until he can't breathe. Arden returns from her dive safe but with terrible news. She found an egg that can only belong to the creature, which means there's more than one monster. Carly is also making horrifying discoveries, as a piece of Aaron's clothing leads her to the remains of her friend. Shortly after, one of the pups jumps very close to them and ensnares Danny's ankle with its tongue. The young man holds on with all his strength to avoid being dragged while Carly brings a heavy stone and drops it right in the middle of the tongue. This transforms it into a slingshot, and the monster is yanked sharply, hitting its forehead against the stone. Unaware of his daughter's exploits, Will tells Arden that he's increasingly worried because she's not answering him. Arden then mentions that she saw Carly leaving on a boat with Aaron and Danny, which infuriates Will. At the harbor, his concern returns, but this time for his brother. Jay is not responding to Barbara's calls on the radio, and Will decides to go to the park to look for him. Carly and Danny run back to the cabin while another pup lurks nearby. Carly is very anxious, as no one knows they're there. Danny mentions Drew, but Carly says he must have been eaten too. Then they hear what sounds like a low growl outside. Through binoculars, they spot several other pups atop a hill, all staring directly at the cabin window. Carly panics and tells Danny to do something, but he doesn't even know where to start. He asks if Will has any weapons, and she says her father only fishes, not hunts. However, Danny thinks the monsters do look like fish and decides to raid his father-in-law's cupboard, where he finds harpoons and various tools. The couple starts to craft improvised weapons and set traps until one of the creatures breaks in upstairs, shattering the bedroom window. Carly pins the invader to the floor with a harpoon, and it begins to emit a high-pitched shriek. Danny says the sound seems like a cry for help, as if it's calling its siblings. Carly then grabs a knife and stabs it right in the middle of that thing until it goes silent, leaving Danny increasingly impressed by her bravery. However, her agility isn't enough, and the other pups are already on their way, responding to the cry for help. Danny hooks the first one with a fishhook, and Carly stabs the second one with the tip of the harpoon. This leaves each one stuck to their opponent, which becomes dangerous as more arrive. With his other hand, Danny tears apart an electrical wire and tries to touch it to the canopy, but the other pups use their tongues to restrain his wrists. He calls for help from Carly, who strikes one and forces it to release its tongue. Then Danny manages to touch the wire's tip to the canopy, frying all the monsters above. Unfortunately, this doesn't solve the problem, as the lower floor is already overrun. Danny and Carly are forced to climb up again and run to one of the rooms. At the docks, Ben is preparing because he wants to lure the family of monsters to land, knowing that humans are at a disadvantage in the water. Barbara arrives and pleads with him not to do this madness, but now it's a matter of honor, and he doesn't listen to her, soon getting smeared with dead fish for his plan to work. Trying to appeal to some authority, she attempts to talk to Jay again, but what responds is Will's tearful voice, who has just found what remains of his brother. She warns him that Ben has lost his mind and has locked himself in a cage waiting for the predators. When Barbara goes out again, Ben tries to warn her that the creature is there, but she doesn't understand his shouts. The monster leaps right next to her and bites off her head in one swift motion. Horrified, Ben manages to shoot a harpoon into its back, but struggles to load the second one, and the beast spits its toxin at him before he can fire again. He quickly becomes paralyzed, nearly completely at the creature's mercy. When the horde of monsters finally tires of destroying the entire cabin, Carly and Danny tiptoe out. Their plan is to reach the old ferry on the island, which, despite being decommissioned, may still have a working radio. However, a small dog that was left behind attacks them as soon as they begin their journey. After knocking Danny down, it grabs Carly's neck with its tongue and nearly chokes her. Danny strikes it with an axe, and the grip loosens when its owner loses his mind. Reaching the docks, Will and Arden are horrified to see what has become of Barbara. Ben remains unharmed, as the monster was unable to eat him through the bars, but the poison carried him away anyway. Will then discovers that their true plan was to use the harpoon to insert a tracking chip into the creature. The idea worked, but Will panics when he sees that the thing is heading towards the same island where his daughter is. As he and Arden race towards the island in a speedboat, the young couple arrive at the ferry and discover that the radio is not working. The only usable thing around them are the beacons. According to the GPS, the monster is approaching simultaneously with the boat from the other side of the island. When Will and Arden disembark, they quickly find some pieces of Aaron and become even more frightened. But soon after, Danny sets off the beacon, and everyone runs towards it. Unaware that help is so close, the young couple looks for a place to hide and hears a roar much louder than the puppies. Danny drops Carly off at a safe spot on the boat and says he will check. Arden also hears the roar and tells Will that it sounds like a call. The answer soon comes in the form of a pack of puppies running towards them. Upon finding the remains of an animal, Carly realizes that her hiding place is not so safe after all. She begins to hear a strange noise coming from a compartment in the wall and cautiously approaches until a slimy paw reaches for her. Carly discovers that she has slammed the door shut so tightly that she can no longer open it to escape. Outside, Danny comes face to face with the adults and is nearly shot. He tells them that Carly is safe and begins to lead them to her, but Arden notices that the beeping of the tracker is getting too loud. Danny is grabbed by the monster's tongue just as the baby opens the compartment lid. Hearing Carly's screams, Will rushes to save her, but it is not necessary. He and Arden hide their shock when they see that the girl has stung all of the babies. The GPS shows that the creature is circling the boat, and they soon discover the terrible reason, that is where it has laid dozens of eggs. In addition to escaping, they now need to find a way to destroy it. Will find several tanks of a flammable substance and siphons gasoline from an abandoned car while the two set the rest of the trap. Everything is ready when Arden warns that the mother monster is coming down. Will orders Arden to get Carly off the boat and waits for the creature to approach. However, she grabs his foot with her tongue just as he lights the fuse, preventing his escape. Will only escapes because he has a cigar in his mouth and uses the tip to burn the monster's tongue. Outside, Carly panics when she sees the boat explode, thinking her father is dead, but fortunately, Will soon appears behind them, calling his daughter a crybaby. A few days later, Will has acquired a boat and now has his daughter and her new friend Arden on his crew.